What is up, guys? Welcome to my first ever episode of my piano progress vlogs. I guess that's really what this is. So what I'm going to be showing you guys today is what I have worked on in my first 21 days. Now, the overall goal here is twofold. One, of course, I'm just trying to document my progress for myself just so I can look back on it. But also, I want to show you guys what works for me, what doesn't work for me, how I approach this, to hopefully help other people who are in the same boat as me. These are not lessons. This is not what this is meant to be, because I don't want to be the blind leading the blind here. I mean, I've only been playing keyboard for 21 days, and even though, I mean, I could make a lesson and just repeat what I've seen in other lessons, that's not really, there's really no point in that. I want to give you guys something that isn't already available to you. So hopefully this accomplishes that. So, what have I worked on the past 21 days? Well, first of all is these 5-note scales, right? You start in C, and you just work on these 5-note scales. And things that I focused on is, number one, trying to have good technique, and things I'm trying to focus on is having somewhat of an arch. You know, my hands, I guess from your angle it's hard to tell, but you know, just a little bit of a curve in my hand, and then my fingers are somewhat curved, not excessively so, but just a bit. And so focusing on that, and also being relaxed. As a bass player, one of the things I've learned is that it's easy to apply way more effort to playing an instrument than you actually need to. So I'm just trying to focus on playing as relaxed and with as little effort as possible. And that goes for my whole hand. I mean, what can end up happening, I found, is, you know, one part of your hand can be relaxed, but then your arm can be tense or whatever. So trying to focus on things like that. As far as the actual scale goes, what I tried to do is just start out slowly and evenly. And so I started with one hand, and after a period of time, that hand would get tired, so then I moved on to the other hand, which is, of course, just the opposite. You start with your pinky finger instead of your thumb. And what I did is I alternated between each hand, and I tried to build my speed up to, I mean, a pretty decent speed. I forget exactly what it was, but let's say it was this. Right? And then I tried to do it with both hands. And of course I didn't play it like that the first time I did it. And unfortunately, I was so excited to start teaching myself piano that I didn't film anything prior to this video. So in the next videos, I'll actually have, you know, little clips to show you guys as I start a new concept and how it progresses and how I get better at it. But for the time being, you know, you're just gonna have to take my word for it. But I added both hands and tried to do the same thing. Start as slow as I needed to go in order to get the notes even, and then work my way up. Now, another thing that I added was making the notes staccato. And I don't really know why, but I actually had a hard time with that at first. I don't know if it must have something to do with the way your brain processes the notes and thinks about it. And so in order to, instead of playing them smooth, playing them staccato was actually a bit of a challenge. But as you can see, eventually after a period of time, I was able to get them very even as well. Now, after that, I added a series of variations, and you can make up your own, and that's something else that I found when I was teaching myself bass, and even trumpet as well, practicing trumpet. It's good to just make up exercises for yourself. But as far as the three main ones that I worked on, it was and then the right, so those are our three variations. Well, the first one is the theme, and the other two are variations. But the way I approach the variations is the same as I did the original scale, just starting out slow and trying to work my way up. Same deal with that. One hand, then go to the other hand, then try to do them together. Build the speed up. Once I was comfortable with each variation by itself, then what I tried to do is play them in random order, like random sequence. So here's an example. I'll do it with just one hand. Right, and I could go on and on with that. But the point is, you just mix them up, and mix them up on the fly. because I think what that does for your brain is, I don't know if it, not necessarily improvisation, but just anything, like if you have an idea in your brain that you want to play, like even if you have a song memorized and you got to think about where you're going to go next, you got to be able to actually execute that. So I think that was a good exercise for me, getting my fingers to do what I want them to do when I want them to do it. And like I say, I think it was about a week, maybe a week and a half, that I worked on just these exercises, right? Both hands, one hand, you know, at different places on the keyboard, right? Up here. Oh, not there. Here. You know, all the way down here. I don't have to keep showing you, but you guys get the idea. And another thing that I'll make note of is I did add a metronome, but not until I had the notes under my hands. I think a metronome is a very useful tool, but you can't try and work on timing of notes if you don't know how to play the notes to begin with. And so it was only when I could play these exercises like pretty decently without a metronome that then I added the metronome in, and same thing as before, started out very slow, maybe 70, 80 beats per minute, and worked my way up. Be mindful of, as you go, things that I mentioned like technique and how much effort you're putting in. You have to be constantly aware of that, because it's very easy to forget that and then develop bad habits. Better to just not form that bad habit to begin with. Next, I moved on to the C scale. Now, again, this is not meant to be lessons, so I'm not going to teach you the technique to play a C scale correctly, but what I will show you is that given the technique, which is crossing underneath like this, to get used to that, what I did is instead of playing the whole scale immediately, I kind of modified the 5-note exercises like this. Right? Eventually I was able to get myself to a point where I was very comfortable with that, and then I was able to just do the rest of the scale. As before, practiced it with the left hand as well, and then this is where it really started to get tricky, because my biggest barrier to ever starting to learn the piano was the fact that I know I'm not very good at doing two different things at once. So that was a challenge. So what I did is kind of similar to this exercise, just playing the 5-note scale. I added that with both hands, right? Because that gets you to practice. This hand's not moving, this scale's just going up and down, but this hand's crossing. So now, obviously, having practiced it a lot, I can do it with ease, even while I'm talking, which, as a side note, I'm actually amazed, because I can't talk and play bass at the same time. Of course, with your other hand, you cross at a different point. So what I actually did is I reversed that previous exercise with the 5 notes, but all we're doing is we're just going down the scale. But in this hand, it's the opposite as before. This one, we're just 1 finger per note, whereas over here, we're crossing. So that got like the ability to cross at the correct time under my hands, and then finally, once I had that under control, then I was able to move on. As before, I added some variations, and you can, again, I think it's very good that you just make up exercises for yourself, but I'll just show you the 2 variations I was doing. And this is the second. And this is a really good exercise because at first, when I first started this out, just about every time, I would either go too far or not far enough, and likewise doing the opposite way, I would be hitting the B, which now this octave feels like, first of all, it's under my hand, so I'm used to it, but it also just doesn't feel like as big of a stretch, because I think I've kind of, whatever tendons and muscles in my hand are used for that, they become more acclimated to that. So practice those variations, and as before, what I did is I would run through the scale and then mix them up. Right? So just mix them up, and of course both of those things, everything we do here Practice with one hand, practice with the other hand, build your speed up, and try to get both hands. Finally, once you're feeling pretty comfortable with these, add your metronome in. Start at a very slow tempo, 80 BPM, work your way up. But make sure you're ready for that. Make sure you're ready for the metronome, otherwise it won't help you. Last but not least is something that I've been working on pretty recently, and I'll probably maybe address in the next video, just because of the fact that I'm actually not 100% comfortable with this, but that is multi-octave scales. Right, and obviously there's different, crossing times and stuff for that, which is not something I'm going to be teaching you guys. But for that crossing, what I would do is just like before, where I just played half of it, I would get to this point where, right? So that's where we just crossed here. Right? So like that point right there where the crossing takes place is like something that I would practice, just like getting familiar with that area, feeling what it feels like to cross 4 fingers instead of 3 when you're playing just 1 octave. And then once I was comfortable with that, then I moved to the whole scale. Not bad. You get the idea. So that's something I'm going to work on a little more. Not ready for the metronome yet, I don't think. I think I need to get it a little bit faster without before I move to that. But that's where we're at now. So hopefully this video was helpful. Hopefully I can get some feedback on these videos as I'm going, and I can make them better for you guys if something's, you want me to focus more on something, less on something. But like I said, the idea here is I don't want these to be lessons. I'm not going to show you how to do everything. I'm just going to show you what I did with everything once I knew how to do it, if that makes sense. So we're almost at 20 minutes here. I thought this was going to be a 10-minute video. I'm going to cut it off now. We'll see you guys in the next one.